All right. I think I think we're going to kick off if that's all right with everybody. It's
Good with
not a
me.
bad not a bad start. Less than academic time, so I'm happy with that. Um, so for all who I haven't met as yet in person visually, we have had some communication over the while. But I'm Cedric, by the way. I'll be your fearless leader on the program. And it'll be an absolute pleasure to join you once again on this amazing journey. This will be my ninth, and in 2019, I made the fatal mistake of telling they coerced me really of telling the group that they were the best group I've ever had. So, but in 2023, I corrected that because they were fantastic, and I'm sure you guys are going to be fantastic as well. So it'll be an ongoing tradition of the best group ever will be the year that we're going with at the time, which is a good way to go, I think. So it is an absolute honor and a privilege to once again be leading the group. I'll give you a very, very short introduction. Um, we are quite a few people here. I know it is remote, so I apologize in advance, but we had no option but to do it this way. And I hope that it will be the start of a wonderful journey, despite the tyranny of distance. So bear with us. We will be trying to do this at some stage interactively. But yeah, we'll just have to keep that in mind that we are doing this virtually, and therefore we will need to, I suppose, manage the expectations with regards to the engagement accordingly. Um, so what we normally do every year is we have two sessions prior to the start of the program. And ultimately, the purpose of this is to try and get a feel for what we're going into, to get to know each other a little bit, not much, because obviously that's a little bit difficult, especially over Zoom. And then just to talk a little bit, get a little bit of a contextual background. One thing I would like to say, and upfront to all the participants, is that we do have a very, very hectra, and I can't remember what the right pronunciation of this would be of the adjective, and there are a lot of teachers amongst you, so I better be careful. Heterogeneal group. In other words, we have
Mixed
people
generation.
from all walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds, and that, to my mind, is fantastic. It adds a real special element to it. And the age group will go all the way from 20 somethings to, and I won't go to the top of the scale, but quite a few years older, mix of male, female, mix of educational backgrounds, mix clearly of knowledge of the Holocaust, connection to the Holocaust, connection to Israel, etc., etc. One of the beauties, I think, of the program is that diversity. It really helps. It really adds a dimension. And so I'm really looking forward to utilizing that. I did mention before, and I'm not going to call them out, but we do have a fair representative of this year of people who are Holocaust educators in their own right, teachers who do know a fair bit, but there are also those of us who are not educators, not only of Holocaust studies, but of general studies. And therefore, we come from different backgrounds. So that I welcome that adversity as well. So, in the context of that, it's always difficult for us to provide. How do we go about putting this all into context, bearing in mind that March of Living, the program, consists of two very, very distinct elements. One is Poland, the study of the Holocaust, etc., etc. The other is Israel, and this year, obviously, an added multitude of dimensions. So, how does one do that when you have people with different backgrounds, etc., etc.? But that So the session that we're going to hold today, and some of you asked me this over emails when we set this up. The purpose of this is really not to give an in-depth thing. It's merely to contextualize it. We've sent you a list of recommended readings, which we suggest that some of you touch up on, brush up on, engage with, etc., etc. But ultimately, the program is an immersive educational program. So ultimately, we will touch, feel, smell all of this on the journey. And therefore, to be honest, even if one knew absolutely nothing, even if one did not read a book, you'll get out of this from the program as much as you would if you were to read up on it. Anyway, I'll touch on that a little bit later on. But we did, prior to this, have a little bit of technical problems with Shirley, who is going to be doing this ed session for us. And so she's busy sorting that out with Yael and Yael's son in the background to try and overcome some of the technical difficulties. She's in Perth, so we'll address that. They've just come back to me saying that they think they've got a solution. So the plan for the day is for me to gently touch on the uniqueness of this year's composition of the group. I'll add a little bit to that shortly, and you'll add to that. And then after that, Shirley will do a short presentation, probably 40 minutes, on a little bit about the rise of Nazism, pre-war Poland, some of the ethical dilemmas or dilemmas coming out of the Holocaust, etc., etc. And that will just be a very, very brief overview. And then we'll move into some of the other stuff that I itemized and put down in the general agenda, which I sent through, including, of course, us introducing each one of us to each other. So hopefully that will enable us to get a bit of a feel. And then I'll talk a little bit more about a few elements that I really want to emphasize going into this prior to the next session, which we'll get to right at the end. So I see that Shirley has joined us. So Shirley, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and putting your hand up, and then
okay. Hi, everyone.
I will just quickly introduce you to Shirley. Shirley, I've been involved in Martial Living since 2006. Shirley actually precedes me. She dates back to 2005. She has been a rock and a pillar alongside myself and other volunteers on the program. And Shirley comes from Perth. She's the stalwart of Martial Living Australia in Perth. She's a teacher from now retired from Carmel. And she runs the programs related to Holocaust memorialization in Perth for the newly to be established museum that she's involved in setting up. And truly, Shirley has accompanied me on this journey, and we are partners in crime alongside this. And Shirley is a wealth of knowledge. She and I have been on the program together a number of times, but also she's been on times that I haven't been, and vice versa. So Shirley, if Josh and Yael were able to help us overcome some of the technical issues, I'm going to hand over to you, and then get you to start going through a bit of an overview as I introduce shortly before you rejoined us.
Okay, thanks everybody. Hi, lovely to meet you all. You are in for a wonderful experience if you haven't been to Poland before. And you're in wonderful hands with Cedric, who is a real veteran, and it's a privilege to be with him. So I'm going to I will just give you a brief overview. I'll try and be as brief as I can. It's one of my biggest problems. I always want everyone to know more, but you will get a recommended reading list, and I recommend that you read up on that so you'll get much more of an insight. I'll just provide a bit of a basic plan for you. Okay, so if you want to ask me any questions later, if there's time, I don't know, but let's get started. Yael and Josh, thank you for your help. And can we start, please? Are they you sharing your screen, aren't you?
Sorry, give us 1 second.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I don't know if they can see me. I don't know.
I'll tell you.
Do you want to listen to it?
I can hear you.
How do I know if the video's on?
That's not on. Nothing's on yet. Okay, thank you.
You want to sit next to me and look at it as well?
Okay, so can you
You want to look at it?
slideshow? Okay, great, thank you.
This is
Okay. Before the outbreak of the Second World War, more than 3.3 million Jews lived in Poland, the largest Jewish population in Europe, and that comprised a third of the entire population. Poland served as the center for Jewish culture, and a diverse population of Jews from all over Europe sought refuge there, contributing to a wide variety of religious and cultural groups. Next slide, please. Here is just a bit of life about the diversity of Jews in Europe before the Holocaust. Thank you.
And just give us a thumbs up if you can hear the sound, please.
The Jewish world before the war was diverse, not homogeneous. There was no one way to be a Jew. They were traditional and modern and orthodox and progressive and every shade in between. They were Nobel Prize winners and they were tailors and tradesmen. They were wealthy and they were so poor they couldn't afford shoes for their children in the winter. They went to religious schools, they prayed, and they respected the 2,000-year-old Jewish tradition. But they also went to the movies, played sports, and danced the tango. They fell in love. They had fun. They were busy with life, looking toward the future. They did not live their lives in the shadow of the catastrophe looming on the horizon. We often say that it's impossible to understand the scope of the tragedy that was the Holocaust without understanding what we lost. Before World War II, close to 10 million Jews lived, worked, and grew up in Europe. In some places, like Greece and Italy, they had created communities that existed for over 2,000 years. In 4 short years, those communities were obliterated. On the eve of World War II, the interwar Jewish world was creative and complex, a rich mosaic full of change and hope for the future. Within a decade, most of Europe would be conquered by Nazi Germany. By 1945, 2 out of every 3 of these Jews were silenced forever. In the end, it didn't matter who or what they were. To the Nazis, they were all Jews, and that was reason enough to kill them. The Holocaust was the murder of 6 million Jews, each a human being, each a universe unto himself. But in addition, it was the decimation of the magnificent, vibrant culture these people had created all throughout Europe. It is necessary to understand not just how they died, but how they lived. By taking this glimpse into their life, culture, and the spirit of the world they lived in, we can give them back their names and their faces. This will help in understanding the magnitude of the tragedy and will ensure that the victims are not forgotten.
Thank you. So during the Crusades in the 13th century, Poland served as a haven for European Jewry because of its relative tolerance. Next slide, please. Okay, that's the one. Thank you. In 1264, Duke Boleslav Pobosny, you can see on the left, issued the Statute of Kalut, which guarantees protection of the Jews and granted generous legal and professional rights, including the ability to become money lenders and businessmen. King Kazimierz, as you can see on the right, he ratified this charter in the early 14th century and confirmed the privileges granted to Jews in 1264 by the Duke. Under penalty of death, he prohibited the kidnapping of Jewish children for the purpose of enforced Christian baptism, and he inflicted heavy punishment for the desecration of Jewish cemeteries. He even invited Jews who were being persecuted in other countries to settle in Poland in great numbers, which was really unheard of, protecting them as people of the king. About 70% of the world European Jews, or Ashkenazi, which a lot of us are, can trace their ancestry actually to Poland because of Kazimierz's reforms. His legendary Jewish mistress, they say he had one, Esteka remains unconfirmed. So we're not sure if that was the reason, but as it was, with this protection, Jewish community in Poland began to thrive. By the 16th century, 80% of Jews worldwide lived in Poland. From the 16th to the 18th century, Jews enjoyed a measurement of self-government, the Council of Four Lands. You can see a picture in the middle. That was Jews actually with autonomy, only having to answer to the very highest echelons of the Polish government. And Jews were active at all levels of society and politics. Okay, next slide, please. Kazimierz' treatment of Jews was unusually just and fair-minded at the time. This enabled centers of Jewish learning, like in Krakow, in Lublin, and in Poznan, to flourish throughout Poland until the eve of World War II. The Hasidic tradition would actually develop there as well. If you look on the top left, is it was called the Yeshivat Chachmei Lublin, which was a very famous yeshiva in Lublin, which during the Second World War became a medical school, and it was reclaimed not that long ago by the Jewish community. Today, it's a beautiful synagogue and museum, which you will visit. It's really around the corner from Majdanek. It's a beautiful old museum with a lot of tradition, and it's also used as a functioning synagogue. The bottom right is also another yeshiva or a school of learning. There were lots of those, and the pictures you see are of really very intense learning. My favorite one is the one in the middle on the left with the teacher and those little innocent boys looking out, looking at whoever's taken the photograph and studying, and you just wonder how many of those actually survived. The bottom, in the middle, the bottom one is, just in case you want some equality, is actually a girls' school, because girls' education wasn't that important in those days. Until a lady called Sarah Schreiner decided to establish a school called Beis Yaakov, and she established a religious girls' school, which still actually exists in America today. So, very amazing roots of Judaism, of knowledge, of learning, which just hasn't been replicated anywhere else today. Okay, next slide, please. Jews enjoyed a very rich cultural life in pre-war Poland. You can see on the left, there's Yiddish newspapers. There were hundreds of Yiddish newspapers weekly. Literally, there's somebody selling them. On the top right is Yiddish theater, which really got its origins in Poland. The bottom right is Maccabi. There was sporting, there was theater. Complete, really amazing, complete life for Jews to live a cultural, rich life. The two middle pictures I'll talk about now. For them, most of them lived in little shtetls, like little villages, which you can see in the middle, which they were market towns that existed in Eastern Europe from the mid-17th century till the Second World War. For the most part, Jews were not actually allowed to own land, and their experiences as merchants, connections with other Jewish communities, and financial skills made them ideal intermediaries between the Polish landlords and farmers. The majority of Jews, however, were poor and worked as peddlers, artisans, shopkeepers, bricklayers, shoemakers, and tailors, dairymen, blacksmiths, providing services to their own community and the surrounding villages. But with changing economic conditions and the fear of pogroms in the east, many Jews chose to leave the shtetls and move to the larger cities, where they formed large urban communities, which also thrived and surpassed the shtetl in primary and economic relevance. Others were drawn to cosmopolitan cities in Europe and the United States, also from fear of pogroms and persecution, where cultural and economic support allowed for greater degree of freedom. By World War II, the days of the shtetl as a vibrant center of Jewish life were over. Next slide, please. So, how did conditions in Germany and Europe at the end of the First World War contribute to the rise and triumph of Nazism in Germany? And next slide, please. Okay, so in the aftermath of World War II, Germany struggled to understand their country's uncertain future. Citizens faced poor economic conditions, skyrocketing unemployment, political instability, and profound social change. See that I'll talk about in a minute. The humiliation of Germany's defeat and the peace settlement, the Treaty of Versailles that followed in 1919, would play a very important role in the rise of Nazism and the coming of a Second World War just 20 years later. The terms of the treaty led to widespread political discontent in Germany. In October 1929, as we know, the US stock market crashed and an economic depression spread throughout the world. Adolf Hitler gained support by promising to overturn the terms of the Treaty of Versailles and restore Germany to its former glory. The picture on the right is one of what Hitler used as a propaganda method of saying we were stabbed in the back. It's a very ugly caricature of a Jew stabbing a German in the back. So that was one of his propaganda tools, which we'll see a bit more of later. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so here we're going to see a short overview of Hitler and the rise of Nazism. Please read more about him, but I don't want to take up more time. But this is a really good video. It gives you a good overview of Hitler and the rise of Nazism. Play.
Germany was now a very different nation. It was still Europe's biggest country, but its militaristic monarchy had gone. It had become a democracy. But its government, the so-called Weimar Republic, was soon struck by a series of hammer blows. Street battles erupted between extreme right-wing nationalists and communists trying to start a revolution. Then, in 1923, the country was devastated by hyperinflation, which reached hundreds of % a month. Ordinary people's savings were wiped out. This was fertile ground for a new breed of rabble-rousing right-wing politicians. Among them, Adolf Hitler. Hitler had been born in Austria. He had fought bravely as a soldier in World War I and been awarded the Iron Cross. On returning to Germany, he settled in Munich, and his fiery oratory soon enabled him to seize control of the small National Socialist or Nazi party. In October 1923, Hitler and his henchmen attempted an armed coup against the Weimar government. It failed, and he was sentenced to 9 months. In prison, he wrote a book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, in which he blamed Germany's ills on the Jews and demanded that it rebuild its strength and seek new territories in the East. On his release, he set about building the Nazis into a proper, disciplined political party. From now on, he would use the democratic system to achieve power. But for the next 5 years, Weimar Germany prospered. Support for extremist parties, left and right, dwindled. Then suddenly, Hitler's opportunity arrived. In October 1929, the US stock market crashed. Billions of dollars were lost, and an economic depression swept across the world. Unemployment in Germany soared to over 6 million. Only extremist politicians seemed to offer a solution. Politicians like Hitler. By 1931, his Nazis were a true mass movement. And they had their own brown-shirted thugs, the SA stormtroops, who numbered almost 3 million. In the 1932 elections, the Nazis became the largest party in Germany's parliament, the Reichstag. But Hitler refused to join a coalition, leaving parliament paralyzed. To break the impasse, President Hindenburg made him chancellor in January 1933, head of the government. Within a month, the Reichstag burned down. Hitler accused the communists and demanded emergency powers. He then used them to ban all other political parties. In August 1934, President Hindenburg died. Hitler declared himself president. He was now absolute leader, the Führer of Germany.
It's an important thing to come out of that. Initially, he thought he would, take over Germany by democratic processes. But as we saw, von Hindenburg tried to appease Hitler, thought he could control Hitler because the party was just so disruptive in the parliament. He thought if he made him chancellor, he would be able to control Hitler, and that way they would carry on the Weimar Republic. As we saw, as soon as von Hindenburg died, Hitler basically announced himself as Führer. So all democracy basically went to the dogs. So really very interesting. That's a very good, important part to remember. Okay, next slide, thank you.
Germany was now a very different nation.
Okay, so how did the German government under Nazi rule build support among the German people? I know you can't answer me, so next slide, please. And that was, of course, propaganda. Propaganda is the most powerful tool. Hitler said himself, if you tell a lie big enough and let it fester enough, people will believe it. And that, unfortunately, is true today in our current situation in the Middle East. We'll talk a little bit about that later because propaganda is so powerful. So these are children's books and board games, which, of course, if you start talking to children and influencing children, children are like little sponges, and that is your future. So in the middle, there's a book called The Poisonous Mushroom, which was a very, very, very popular bedtime story. If you have a look on the top left, there's a beautiful picture of a mother and her little boy going mushroom picking in the German forest. And the mother starts, it's a long, I won't tell you the story now, but the mother said, there are good and bad mushrooms, good and poisonous mushrooms. And do you know who the poisonous mushrooms are of the world? Yes, there's the sun. I know, it's the Jews. Our teacher has told us about them. And this is a story that is actually aimed to demonize Jews and to make children scared and suspicious of Jews. The picture below that is also another story, is a man, stereotypical big nose, all the rest, big black coat, saying to children, look, I've got candy, but you have to come with me. So, all intended to instill fear in children. Children's board games, very popular. At the top is a Ludo game, and as you can see, the board is actually the shape of a swastika. So it's just being ingrained all the time. Below that is a game called Juden Raus, Jews out, a bit like Snakes and Ladders, where the playing pieces at the bottom, very ugly, also caricatures, stereotypical ugly faces. The aim was to get as many Jews off the board as possible. So you could hear these children, you can imagine these young children screaming, Juden Raus, Jews out, and get as many Jews off the board as possible. Psychological, basically, influencing and, getting into children's psyche, even children. So, yeah, very important to start at the bottom with the children. Next slide, please. Weekly newspaper, Der Stürmer was a stormtrooper, was a weekly newspaper. Every single one of them had a very anti-Semitic picture, usually from the Middle Ages. The one on the left is a picture of Jews killing a Jewish child for ritual reasons, from the Middle Ages. The other one is a very ugly character with an article, and everyone at the bottom said the Jews are our misfortune. Even if you went into a pub to have a beer, these, you can see at the bottom in the middle, these are the beer coasters that said, whoever buys from a Jew is a traitor. So it was just everywhere and being ingrained in everybody's psyche and, completely changed cultural attitudes of society. Movies. This was a movie shown at mainstream movies, the classic, the Ritz, wherever, the Eternal Jude, Ewige Jude, which spoke about Jews being rats, infesting the sewers and, really destroying society. So huge parallels and obviously very impressionable on people who didn't really know very much. Okay, and the next slide. The Hitler Youth, very, very powerful. If young children basically young boys especially, were enlisted at the age of about 10 into the Hitler Youth, you basically couldn't refuse, and they were totally indoctrinated. In fact, they even were told to listen to their teachers more than their parents. If any parents said anything against Hitler, the children were actually advised to dob them into their counselors, and the parents were often punished for that. So you can see this pure Aryan model, this young boy, blonde hair, blue eyes. The girls were also in a youth league, and they were trained to become good German mothers, good German Aryan mothers, purity, all this beautiful images that people strive to be. So the belief was that the future of Nazi Germany was its children. Okay. The next one I'm showing you is just the next slide, please. Is just to compare how important propaganda is and how powerful it is. If you see the picture right at the top, there's a Jew, still from the Poisonous Mushroom children's book, sitting on a globe, and he's sitting at the bank, with a bag of money somewhere. And the same thing this is from this year, from the Mother Israel, sitting also on the globe, like trying to control the world. So very big parallel, quite scary when you look at it. And the other pictures that you see all the time, the posters, Israel in the bin and no Israel, and the map of Israel being Palestine. All of those things really have had a huge effect since the 7th of October, and people believe it. I heard a woman this morning who said people actually don't want to hear the fact. They just want to see what social media are feeding them. And it's quite scary, but it makes you realize the power of propaganda. So that is how Hitler was so powerful. He didn't have Facebook, he didn't have TikTok, but he managed to convince the German people that the Jews were to blame for all their problems. And that was really how he came to power. Okay, so next slide, please. I won't talk more about the whole Holocaust story, because that you can read in your reading, please. I just wanted to show you the Poland, which you're going to go. When the Nazis set their sights on Poland, they sought to destroy all that was there and build it up again as a colonial homeland for Germans, because it was right next door, basically. In the process, they situated their major killing centers there, organizing a railway line that took Jews and other prisoners from neighboring countries to be murdered in occupied Poland. And here there were hundreds of camps all over Poland. There were death camps, there were labor camps. But these were the main extermination camps, which were Auschwitz-Birkenau being the biggest one at the bottom. You can see on the bottom left, Auschwitz-Birkenau. Right, the highest one is Treblinka. Chelmno was the first camp on the towards the left. Sobibor, Majdanek, and Belzec towards the right. It's a huge country. It takes like 5 hours by bus to get from Auschwitz to Treblinka. Huge country, but they had a very effective railway system. And this is how Hitler was able to put his whole final solution plan back basically into action. Okay, so before liberation in 1945, nearly 5 million Poles died, including 3 million Jews and about 1.9 non-Jewish Poles. The Poland that emerged from the war, as evidenced by post-war attacks on Jewish survivors, lacked the diversity that had been essential to Polish culture on the eve of the Second World War. In 2023, only 4,500 Jews lived in Poland, where there were like 300,000. Although there probably were more, because a lot of Jews were, after the Holocaust, the ones that stayed in Poland denied their Judaism. They were too scared to carry on being Jewish. They didn't tell their children they were Jewish. They were trying to protect their children from what had happened to them. In fact, one year on March of the Living, we had a survivor with her, and she had found a cousin who lived in Poland as well, who had completely denied her Judaism. And we saw the two together. Saba Feniger, the survivor, met her cousin that she knew about, and they hadn't seen each other for over 50 years. So, but the cousin had no connection to her Judaism, and many people did do that. So some survivors stayed, and many of them left, obviously, because of what happened. But since the end of communism, the small Jewish community has begun to reassert its identity, and begun the process of rebuilding. You'll see signs of that when you go. There's a JCC in Krakow. There's a beautiful renovated synagogue and rabbi in Krakow, in Warsaw, I mean. And most Poles are willing, more Poles are willing to identify as being Jewish since this has all become quite trendy. In fact, when we are March the Living, we normally get Polish students with a student group to actually come who didn't know they were Jewish. They might have found out when their parents or grandparents were on their deathbeds and felt the need to tell them that they were actually Jewish. So it's more trying to keep Shabbat, more trying to wear a kippah. I don't know how good it is these days to wear a kippah in the street, but there is an attempt to rebuild Poland and the Jewish community of Poland. Now, I also want to just show you this. I just found this clip, which is really lovely. It's a group of Polish people, not Jewish, who had in a town called Bejin. Yeah, we're going to show you this now. Who actually are preserving what used to be there. We went to Bejin one year with the students because we had one of our students, his grandfather lived there, and we stood outside his home. This is just a lovely show, just a quick glimpse of non-Jewish people trying to preserve their Polish Jewish identity that used to be there, the heritage, the legacy that was there. So just have a quick look at this. Bejin is not far from Krakow.
From the beginning, it was important for our foundation, for our team, for our people from here, that we are doing it because we are not Jews. This is the point. But we treat it from the beginning as our own Polish, whatever, European, Benjiners, whatever, heritage. This is our past, this is our history.
That's their history, which I think is beautiful.
We want to give that name, which was already known by local people, a new meaning, a new life. This Jewish past, Jewish history should not be excluded from our Polish history. This heritage as a bridge, as a possibility to bring people back together.
Okay, don't put on the next slide yet. I just want to talk before that. There is a lot of anti-Semitism in Poland still, obviously, like there is all over, but it's heartwarming to see incidents like this where people are where they really have no, responsibility to do that. They just feel they want to preserve the Jewish heritage that was there. I mean, half the town was Jewish, so they want to preserve that. You'll find Jewish groups cleaning up cemeteries that have been desecrated or that just need maintenance, it's really quite heartwarming. I always like to find the good, and there is good that is coming out of Poland still. Okay, so not the next slide yet, but I'll just talk about ethical dilemmas during the Holocaust because, it was a very different world to the one that we are used to. So we talk about choiceless choices. Being plunged into a crisis where crucial decisions did not reflect options between life and death, but between one form of an abnormal response and another, both imposed by a situation that was in no way the victim's own choosing. So choiceless choice is a really very strong concept. For example, a mother's natural instinct is to provide for her children and her family as much as she can. But during the struggle for survival in the ghettos, mothers were forced to make a choice. They had to make decisions that went against their maternal instinct. They took the food they got, she would divide into tiny portions and often not give herself any food. Or mothers usually are the ones who provide for their children. Mothers would send their children out to smuggle. The next slide, please, and you can just see that young children, you can see on the right, smuggling food, borrowing or stealing food because they were smaller, they didn't have responsibility, and they would do it. And the parents knew that if their child was caught smuggling, no matter how young, they would be shot. So, a very big choice. The whole fabric of basically the family life was destroyed. Also, if you look on the left, there's a Jewish police in the ghettos. There were Jewish police who volunteered to basically be the Jewish police. They had to choose people for labor. They had to basically force people to go to work. They would often have to do not very pleasant things, choosing for deportations. They chose that because they felt that it would help their families and it would help them maybe live a little bit longer. So that was a very ethical decision for them to think, do I actually hurt my fellow Jews to save my own families? And they were hated by their Jewish communities. They were regarded as traitors, but they felt they were doing it to save their families. Most of them, unfortunately, went the same way, might have had a little bit longer. In the camps, a lot of the Jewish kapos, who were like the block leaders of the block heads of the barracks, were also Jews who sometimes were very sadistic to the inmates in the camps. They did that so they would look like they were doing their job. Also hated, but it was they didn't really have a choice. They had to do that for their own survival. And then, then we have the story about hospitals. Now, every ghetto had a hospital, and lots of camps had doctors and nurses who were prisoners there. Most of the hospitals had a big problem because a lot of them in the ghetto didn't have enough equipment, didn't have enough medicine, and how were they going to save people? So many of them, at the beginning, they would try to give everybody a medication, and then but then basically everybody died. So they made the choice, terrible choiceless choice, that they would only give the limited medicine that they had to people who looked like they were going to survive anyway. So that, of course, was a terrible, when you take a Hippocratic oath as a doctor to save lives, and here they were trying to save lives who they thought were worth saving. So, it was a terrible choice, but they felt they had to make that decision. They also, when there were deportations, children in hospital, the nurses and the doctors would give the young children, intravenous morphine to kill them before they were actually deported to a really certain horrendous death at the hands of the Nazis. Once again, a terrible dilemma, but this is what they had to do. And in the camps, doctors would perform abortions to spare bringing children into the world or to prevent medical experiments. On the left, there's a lady whose name was Ruth Elias. I don't know if any of you remember, she came to Australia many years ago. She was a prisoner at Auschwitz, and she was pregnant. And Dr. Mengele, who was the infamous doctor of death, who basically did very sadistic experiments, decided to use her to wait till she'd had her baby, and then he was going to do an experiment with her. She gave birth to a beautiful little girl, and the experiment was to bind Ruth's breast so that she couldn't breastfeed, and the experiment to see how long the child could live without breast milk, without being fed at all. So the mother would, she'd listen to her child screaming, couldn't feed her. One of the midwives who sort of worked with Dr. Mengele came to her in secret and said, I'm going to bring you morphine, and I actually need you to inject your child and kill your child, because this is just terrible for the child and for you. And Ruth did that. She basically got the injection. The midwife wouldn't do it because she was ethically wrong. and she injected her own baby, and the baby died. And she thought Dr. Mengele would definitely kill her then because she'd killed her baby, but he didn't. He sent her to another camp. She did survive, but imagine that surviving knowing what you had done. But she did that, and she did survive. And the last thing I want to show you on this topic is a letter, part of a letter that always just really is just, it shows you the choices written by an anonymous woman. Dear lady, I leave in your care my child, my treasure, somebody who put her baby outside somebody's house. I beg of you, as you are a mother yourself, save my baby. God will reward you for the good deed, and I and my family will reward you as well. Please remember, this is so, it's almost futile, that this child comes from a very rich family. And if and when we survive the war, we promise to reward you generously. However, if we don't survive, then my little daughter will be able to compensate you for saving her life. I enclose a document which shows that she will be heir to the estate, property, and all the wealth. My child will bring you luck and good health. Please, I beseech you, dear lady, have pity on my child and save her from annihilation. She does not need much. Just feed her and keep her clean. I will try and send you the baby's clothes as soon as possible. She even goes on to tell her what she eats for breakfast and lunch and dinner, not understanding the situation. I found that really very poignant, but that is really the epitome of a choiceless choice. So these dilemmas teach us about the complexity of life in these horrific times and the struggle to maintain humanity in a time of absolute inhumanity. The Holocaust teaches us that every generation owes it to itself and to future generations to cherish and, if necessary, to fight to defend the sanctity of human life, dignity, and freedom. And I'll just end with a quote from Elie Wiesel, a famous survivor and Nobel Prize winner and author. Last slide, please. For the dead and the living, we must bear witness. Not only are we responsible for the memories of the dead, we are responsible for what we do with those memories. And that is I found that's a really good message to send along with you on your journey on March of the Living. So thank you very much, Cedric. I don't think I overspoke too much this year. Was that okay?
Shirley, you were wonderful, as always. Very, very difficult to try and put that in context in such a short period of time. Clearly, and I'll go over that again with everybody, the purpose of this was certainly not to give a in-depth analysis. All of that will depend on each person's inclination and tendency and interest, and also obviously just an entree into the whole topic, but clearly some beautiful anecdotal information there that I'm sure sparks interest for every single one of us. So thanks a million, Shirley. Sorry you're not coming with me this time,
I know, me too. Yeah.
No, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Shirley,
everybody, and good luck.
You're welcome to stay, but if not, I'm sure you've got things to do. But thank you very much, and we'll continue.
All right, I will leave, but thank you very much. I wish you all good luck, and you are, as I said, in excellent hands. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Shirley. Bye. All right, so what I'd like to do now is to open the screen, not the floor, to everyone, just for us to have a bit of a conversation, more an introduction, as briefly as we can, of each one of us. And literally, because we are now 25 people on the call, what I would like us to do is, and I'm going to call you out because otherwise it's going to be a little bit difficult. So I'll do it as you appear on my screen, and it's a totally sort of random way in which everybody appears. I'll ask each one of you just to say your name and to briefly say in one sentence why you are coming on March of the Living, just as a means of an introduction, so that we can get a bit of a feel for all the participants and why you've chosen to come on this journey with us. I'll save myself for the end. You'll hear so much from me, so I'm going to move on to others, so you can all unmute yourselves for the moment, and I'll call you up just because that's the way you appear on my screen. And we'll start with John. You're first up.
Oh, okay. From Brisbane. My mother was a Mengele twin. Her twin sister is still alive. She's just reached 100. And I just feel I owe it to my mother to try and understand, to see some of what she went through. You know, I want to see if I can grasp what it really is. That's all. And pass it on.
Thank you so much, John. I'll just give an anecdote here with relation to John's connection. The daughter of John's aunt. Yes, aunt. The daughter of John's aunt is married to a guy that I worked for many years. For one of the Israeli companies that I worked for here in Australia. She was contemplating joining us, but sadly she decided that she couldn't do it. But we are, and John, I haven't even told you this, we are going to try and go to Bet Terezin on Givat Chaim. I know, so we're going to try and fit that in, so that should be amazing. And I'll come back to that at the end when we talk about the connections, etc., etc. Thank you, John. Mary, you're up next.
Oh, okay. My name is Mary Eason. My friendship with Marsha Thompson goes back to
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Dal. About 50 years ago. I'm a Catholic. I'm not Jewish, but my friendship with Marsha has caused me, amongst other things, over the years, to feel a great affinity with the Jewish people and with the state of Israel. With the exception of COVID, for the last 15 years, I've traveled to conferences in Israel every year in terms of people. I should point out, Marsha and I were both involved in politics, and surprisingly for some of you, with the Labor Party. Marsha is a former Victorian minister, and I was a federal Labor member of Parliament. And given the environment at the moment, I think it's even more pertinent that people of our persuasion are prepared to stand up and to do things. And certainly Marsha and I have always talked about sometime we will go to Poland to see her heritage and background. And then this trip became possible. Certainly one of my husband's business partners has been on the March of the Living and recommended that we go on it. So that's what brings me to this, and very pleased to be a part of it. Thank you.
An absolute privilege to have you join us. Marsha, seeing as though you were mentioned, I'll call on you.
Well, I think Mary might have said everything, really. This is my heritage. My father's escaped Poland just prior to Hitler's invasion, or a couple of years before, but saw what was coming after a visit to Germany. His family perished. It is stories I grew up with. It's the friends with the tattoos on the arm around the table. It's reluctantly hearing their stories that they'd never told their children about their experiences. For me, this is a pilgrimage I must make.
Fantastic, and we're thrilled to have you. Judy.
I live in Melbourne. I was born in 1942 in Budapest. My connection to Poland is only by way of my perished relatives. My daughter, Antonia, who will join us later, has always wanted to go on March of the Living, unbeknownst to me. Her daughter has gone when she was in year 10, and I'd like to go. I feel very privileged to be able to go.
Fantastic, and we're privileged to have you. So Judy is one of the two child survivors that are coming with us. Peter will introduce himself shortly as well. I just want to anecdotally mention that every year March, the actual program, the March of Living program, sort of dedicates the central theme to a specific topic related to the time, the year, etc., etc. And 2024 being 2024 being 80 years since the attempted destruction of Hungarian Jewry, which happened right at the tail end of the war. This year, March of the Living, the actual march itself and the ceremony at Auschwitz-Birkenau will be dedicated to the memory, specifically to the Hungarian Jewry, and also there is a side sort of ceremony and program that is happening in Budapest alongside what we're doing in Poland, and then some of those participants will be joining the march for the tail end and will join us in the march itself from Auschwitz to Birkenau. So it will have a Hungarian focus this time, which is obviously very relevant. So thanks, Judy. Anik, if you can just unmute yourself. Yep, you just need to press the unmute button at the bottom where it says mute. On the left-hand side at the bottom, there's
got
a
it,
mute.
got it.
Yep.
I was clicking in the wrong place. Sorry. So my name is Anik. I grew up in Europe, mostly in France. My childhood and the school, anyway, the Holocaust and history, and it was very much part of what I grew up with. It was still very broadly discussed. And anyway, I have been immersed in Jewish culture, Jewish life, Jewish families. I married, I'm a Jew by choice since the 80s, since actually 81. And my in-laws from Canada were on one side from escaped from Budapest, on the other side actually came from before Israel was Israel. And when I was in the 80s, 40 years ago, actually, this year, I went to Dachau. And that was my first experience going to a concentration camp. I always wanted to further that experience by going to Poland, but I would never go there by myself for tourism. So for me, the March of the Living is the opportunity of a lifetime. I waited a long time to do. In 2012, I made Aliyah with my second husband, who was from South Africa. So there's another big Jewish story there from the Jews of Lithuania who went to South Africa and Scotland. So fully immersed with that side of Jewish history. Things didn't go so well with Aliyah. So I was there for 4 years. So I've actually spent 5 years living in Israel. And this will be my first time going back to Israel, which is really, really important because I hope to go back eventually for whatever. So yes, this March of the Living is really, it's amazing. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm so grateful to be able to do this. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks. Wonderful story and lovely to have you. Okay, we've got a duo next coming up, Gabby and Hannah. So if you can introduce yourselves independently and individually.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Gabby. I'm the operations manager of the new Queensland, Queensland Holocaust Museum in beautiful Brisbane, Vegas. I'm the unofficial Queensland March of the Living coordinator.
You are.
Which is kind of funny.
You are.
And I will be coming along with the most beautiful man, Mr. Peter Baruch, and John Heller, Leah Phillips, and Tony, as we call her, a Queenslander. And there's a few other people, Laura and the most beautiful one, the lovely Hannah Rother, and can't wait to meet you all. Very excited. I've always wanted to do this, and I'm very blessed and happy about it. And here's Hannah. Hello.
There you go.
Hello, I'm Hannah. I work at the Holocaust Museum with Gabby in the marketing, just me in marketing. And yeah, I'm a descendant. Both my grandparents on my dad's side are survivors, and my brother Daniel is also a part of that. And he's coming. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to coming and meeting everyone. And yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll meet all the Queenslanders. This is the biggest Queensland delegation ever, and we welcome you with open arms. So fantastic to have everybody join us. Catriona, you're next.
Yes. So
no, not Katrina, me. Catriona.
Oh, I'm actually a Katrina as well. We're going to get confused.
Yes.
Hi.
Catriona.
Hi, everyone. I am a teacher, and I'm very, very honoured to be a part of MOTL Living program this year. I've been teaching about the Holocaust and Jewish history and Jewish culture for about 20 years now, and I'm just looking forward to listening and learning and experiencing, and then being able to take that back to my students, and just enhancing and making sure that, you know, it's not forgotten.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Peter, thank you so much.
Hello. Hello.
Welcome.
My name is Peter Baruch. I was born in 1938 in Lodz in Poland. Somehow I managed to survive. I'm what's known as a Sugihara survivor. And I spend a lot of my time now talking to students and adults groups about my journey, about Poland, and about Sugihara. This is a wonderful opportunity for me to actually go with a group of people to again experience Poland, where I have visited before. I have been to Auschwitz before, and to Israel, where I have also been on several occasions. But this time, I know it's going to be different, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. I just want to jump in here and tell you that the biggest privilege for me over the 9 times that I've been led this program is to be accompanied by the survivors, because the element that they add to this journey for us, for the rest of us as participants, is quite incredible. And so it is an absolute honor and a privilege to have you join us, Peter. And we look forward to everything you can share with us, because ultimately it will be absolutely incredible to, I mean, we're going to be in Lodz. We changed the itinerary slightly to accommodate that. There's nothing like going to the place of birth of the survivor, or any other participants' connections. And so we will be going to Łódź, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on, about how those connections and why they're so important. And obviously the whole Sugihara story is just unbelievable. So we'll have plenty, Peter, time during the program, and that's exactly what it's all about. Thank you so much. All right, the Helfins are up next. So we just need you to unmute. There we go.
I'm not sure if my mum wants to speak first.
Yes.
My wife Hayley had to leave, but the three of us are going. But Mum, I'll let you talk.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, as always. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, Elsie. We can hear you.
Good, good. Look, for me, this is really very, very emotional, as I am of Austrian background, where most of my family perished at Theresienstadt, and I've already made that journey to Theresienstadt. But then again, there was another side where many were in Auschwitz and murdered there. this is something that I've waited a long time to do. I was going to do it. I'm a Wheatso woman, and I was going to do it with Wheatso many years ago. Fortunately, I couldn't. Then my children, Haley and Martin, said, "Mum, what's on your bucket list? We want to do something with you for your 80th birthday, which we're doing in advance for other reasons." And I said, well, on my bucket list always is Israel and, of course, March of the Living. And Martin and Haley responded very, very well to this. This was something they also wanted to do, and I couldn't think of anything, any greater joy than here's my middle son. I've already done the trip to Teresa with my oldest and my youngest. So this, for me, is very, very appropriate. And I look forward to being with you on this journey. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. And I'll just quickly say an anecdote there that another one of the privileges is going with a multi-generational family, because seeing that connection between the parent, or sometimes the grandparent, the parent and the child, or sometimes the parent and the child, is quite astounding and quite unique and really, really special. And thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Thank you.
Mark.
I just echo Mum's sentiments. For us, obviously, it's something very special and important to share with Mum. Also, Haley and I have both done a very similar trip, actually in 2019, where we did go to Poland, and we've been previously to Israel about 7 or 8 years ago. But just to get a deeper understanding of the past and enhance our connection with the present, particularly during this time, is very important to us. So we're looking forward for obviously many reasons, and think it's a very important trip to do at this time.
Thank you so much. Amy, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy. I'm very, very excited to be going on this trip. For myself, I don't have any connections with Jewish history. I was raised a Christian and consider myself quite fortunate to have been raised in a family where Israel has always been deeply honored and loved. So this, for me, this trip is important because I feel it's important, especially in this time, to learn for myself more the culture and the way things are today across the world with Jews, but also in Israel. I've always wanted to go to Israel, so I'm very excited to learn, and I'm very excited to share the experience with you all.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Danny.
My grandparents were born in Poland, and they moved from Poland to France after the First World War to escape anti-Semitism, and my parents were born in the 1920s. But unfortunately, 3 of my grandparents got deported to Auschwitz, where they died. But yeah, my parents were Holocaust survivors, and since October, I've been a volunteer at the Melbourne Holocaust Museum. So it's very close to my heart going to Auschwitz. So so it'll be a very momentous occasion for me.
Thank you very much. Dan?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan. I'm Hannah's older brother, and have 2 of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. Sort of feels like a special trip to go on with my sister, and just to go. I went 10 years ago. It'll be exactly 10 years ago, and obviously a special time to connect with my family's history and the Jewish people's history. So that's me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. Em.
Hi everyone, I'm Em Lewin. I'll be doing much of the living with my mother-in-law, Anne. She can't make it. She's gone to a book launch. We're both doing it together. My father-in-law came from Poland, from a town called Bielsk Podlaski. He was a child Holocaust survivor. He actually wrote a book, which you can buy, I think, from Amazon still. And I'm the granddaughter of 3 Holocaust survivors. So my grandparents on my mum's side are from Romania. One ended up in Auschwitz. The other one, miraculously, just due to a clerical error with the papers, survived the Holocaust with his 9 siblings. And then I have a grandparent from Poland he was from Warsaw. I'm doing much of the living because it's just something I've always wanted to do. My whole family's done it. I unfortunately waited a little bit later to do it. I just wasn't ready. I have 2 children who are already asking questions. They're young. They want to know where they come from and how they've kind of, come to be. And I owe it to my grandparents to honour them, and also to, I think we need to keep the Holocaust education alive on the radar, both in school and at home. I'm also writing a book. So this is just me kind of coming full circle now. I'm writing a book of my grandfather's Holocaust memoirs, which were just incredible, and his life escaping Romania, ending up in Israel and then Australia. So I'm very much looking forward to mother-in-law time as well.
Fantastic. No, that'll be amazing having you and your mother-in-law with us. Thanks so much. Simone. Can't hear you, Simone. We can't hear you. No. There's some problem with the connection there, Simone. Can you hear me? No. I might just send something in that we can't hear you.
Could I say something?
Yes, just
On
one
behalf of Simone?
Yes, by all means.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Simone is my daughter, and she lives in New Zealand, and she is joining us on the March of the Living. And it'll be a very special thing for both of us.
Absolutely.
I do have
That's
5
wonderful.
children. Simone is the oldest, and she's of her own volition is joining us.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Simone, I'm not sure why we can't hear you, but we look forward to having you join us on the next session, and hopefully the comms will be better then. Look, I'm also a Kiwi, by the way, so I won't say anything derogatory about the communication, so let's leave it there. Wonderful to have you join us, Simone. Thank you. I think last but not least is... Oh, no, we've got a few more. Sorry, my mistake. Cara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cara. I'm a head of department for history and RE. And so we were very fortunate enough that our principal went on March of the Living last year, and we were trying to get up a tour to go with our students. Unfortunately, it didn't go ahead. But she came back to us and said, would we like to go? And Alan, who's also here, is one of my colleagues. And so we both said that would be amazing. We teach Holocaust in Year 9. We teach about Judaism through the RE perspective. And then we also teach about the rise of Nazis and all of that area in Year 12 modern history. So it's one of those things that when students ask you about all of those details, just to be able to tell the personal stories and your experiences of going to these places makes it really valuable education for them, but also for us.
Absolutely. And what a privilege it is that you guys are coming with us. So I'll jump to Alan quickly, and then we'll go, because that way we close the circle on the PLC side of it. Alan, yours.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, just what Kara was saying, but also I've got a Jewish background, and some of my ancestors were from Poland, and I've always wanted to be able to visit a lot of these sites. So I'm kind of really looking forward to this opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Antonia.
Yeah.
Hi. I am honored to go with my mum, Judy. I am from Queensland now, so thank you, Gabby, even though I didn't actually know that the other Queenslanders were going. And I've always wanted to go. I sent my daughter, we started in Sydney, and then when we moved to Queensland, we lost a lot of the Jewish life. So she went when she was in year 11, and I've always wanted to go without telling my mum, but I couldn't imagine going without her. And so I sort of orchestrated a whole lot behind the scenes, and only when it was a go ahead did I actually ask her. So it would be a beautiful time together.
And fantastic that your plan came to fruition.
Indeed.
Fantastic. Okay, Katrina.
No, sure.
So, yes. So I was fortunate enough to go on March of the Living last year. And yes, my reason for going, I perhaps don't have such a unique personal reason for going as most people, even though I do have relevant distant relatives. So when I decided to go, it was during 2020, during the lockdowns. I was attending Libud Oz online, and one of the presentations was from one of the 2019 attendees. And so I decided, although I'd known about March of the Living for many years before that, I decided as a result of that presentation that I wanted to go at the next opportunity while there were hopefully still survivors attending. And yes, I found the trip by far surpassed my expectations. It was wonderful, so life-changing. And so I decided I wanted to go again to consolidate it, to learn more. And likewise, I wanted to go again sooner rather than later. Well, there might still be survivors, and it seems this year we're going to be very fortunate in that regard. And after this year's trip, I'd like to try to do something with it to do with writing. I've always wanted to write. It's something that I have a natural ability for, although not much practice with it. And so I can see what I'd like to write about the trip and about the Holocaust, and also in what way, whether with writing or otherwise, that I might volunteer for March of the Living, because I love the organisation so much after having attended. So,
fantastic. Thanks, Katrina. I must say, you're a brave woman to go with me twice, I can tell you. No, thank you so much. Lovely to have you again. Rochelle.
Hello. My husband Anthony and I both are born in New Zealand. He comes from both Jewish. He comes from an English background. So he didn't have the sort of connection that I had. All my family came out from Poland to New Zealand. Two sisters came to Poland. When New Zealand cut off the immigration, one brother went to Canada, and the other 8 children perished. 8 siblings perished in the war. And so my one side of the family was from Biala Podlask, and the other side was from Volchan. So we also grew up with a lot of Holocaust survivors in our little shtetl of Hastings that had been through some really, really terrible times. So we were very much still in it, still very shtetly, even because there were only 50 at the max where I came from. And it was always on my bucket list. And this year seemed very relevant for both my husband and I to go, considering what's happening around the world. And we're both really looking forward to coming in and meeting you all and experiencing this.
Fantastic. That is so special. Another ex-Kiwi, great.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
40 years here, so I suppose
Yes,
it's not
yes.
really-
All right, fantastic. And I believe who've we got left? Sorry,
Catherine Harding.
Catherine. Sorry, sorry, I'm going through the screen here trying to find Catherine, please.
No worries. Thank you. Well, unlike so many of you, which have such interesting stories of connection, I have zero Jewish connections, family. I'm first generation Irish, so Australian. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I know that we've been absolutely terrible in terms of Ireland as a nation in recent times. I must say that growing up as a child of the 60s and 70s, the Holocaust was one of those things that you learned as almost like a zombie horror flick. It was like, this can't have happened. This can't have been real. And as one grew up and into teenage years, and you were then able to see films and to actually understand the sheer horror of it all. When I say understand, just try to get a glimpse of it. And so for me, I've always wanted, deeply wanted to visit Auschwitz amongst other places in Poland. But sort of like it's not on my bucket list, but always wanted absolutely to go. So I feel very, very grateful that my company, Mary spoke of, EG, our directors are part of March for the Living. So I feel very, very grateful that they've chosen me to go. And particularly at this time, I can't explain how horrified I am at present with everything that's happening. And I just think it's very, very important for people like me to come. And really, it's a tired cliche, but bear witness and keep talking about it, because we're going to have to keep doing this for a longer time than I think any of us thought.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I would like to, just for the benefit of the whole audience, just to explain a little bit of the background, because it is quite a phenomenal story. So, as Catherine mentioned, and Mary's husband, Michael, and his business partner, Adam Geha, are incredible human beings. And without them, probably March of the Living, Australia would not be able to function. They are incredibly generous benefactors, and we owe them a huge amount of gratitude. And I'm humbled. Catherine is now, I think, the third or fourth person from the company that the company has sponsored to go. Fifth, actually, partially sponsored, and it is an absolute incredible testimony to the people that run that organization, specifically Adam and Michael, that they recognize the importance of this and are prepared to make sure that some of their employees get the benefit of going on this journey. So I personally am eternally grateful to them. I can count Adam as being one of my closest friends and confidants. He is also our current acting chair of our board. He happens to be Christian Lebanese. He came on the program in 2019 and has been a supporter of March of Living ever since. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Michael. And it's wonderful having more people from EG join us. And I do believe that there is one other person that I have not given the floor to or screen, and that is Laura. Am I right?
I think Laura's on mute.
I think Laura's got some issues with her video and sound.
Okay. So we will possibly jump on from there, and Laura will join us at another time in the flesh or whatever, when we can see her and hear her, etc. etc. There we no. Okay. So look, that was just the tip of the iceberg, clearly, of just an introduction. And honestly, now, certainly from my perspective, I get the sense that the group is even more diverse than I even imagined, despite the fact that I've read your applications, etc., etc. There is an incredible mix of people from so many different backgrounds and perspectives, and I think that we will have the most incredible journey by virtue of the discussions that we'll have amongst us. Never mind the learnings that we'll take away from it, but the actual connections, and I'll talk to that in a moment. So I hope that gave everyone an essence of who's in the group with us. I think we've got a wonderful group, and ultimately anybody that comes on this program, I do believe, is coming with a predetermined intention or shared desire to learn and to share and to memorialize and to learn, and so that bodes well for the program going forward. I'm going to talk on just a few things with regards to preparation. So Shirley alluded to it. We have said this in the email that we sent when we sent out the recommended reading and viewing, and that is, look, we've sent through a very, very, I guess, broad array of titles and topics, whether they be historical, whether they be autobiographies, whether they be poetry, whether they be all sorts of novels, historical journals, videos, movies, etc., etc. At the end of the day, each one of you will take from that list what you feel that you can absorb. Clearly, it is not prescriptive. It's purely there as a recommendation. You can pick from it as you wish, depending on your inclination, your time, your interest, etc., etc. There is no obligation. All I will say is that clearly there is, and again, it's cliche, the more prepared you are, I guess, the better, or the more you will have the tools in which to deal with some of it. But on the other hand, having a clean slate perspective might also be quite refreshing. So I'll leave that totally to your discretion. You can do with that as you wish. I will try and talk to the other side of the preparation, and that is for those of you who, clearly there are some amongst you who come with a direct link to places that we will visit and places that we may not visit, but that are in the locations of places that we will visit. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend and request that anyone who has any sort of connection, and just recently, I think it was M, excuse me if I mention you as an example, M sent us some detail about her one grandparent gave us an address in Warsaw and asked whether it is in proximity to where we'll be going, etc., etc. And although it's not exactly on the beaten track, I can assure you that if there is anyone who has any kind of connection to a particular place that is en route, near, close, not that close, just bring it to my attention, and I will try, together with our guide, to see whether or not we can incorporate. I can tell you certainly, well, over the years, that's always been the case. Shirley mentioned a young student, year 11 kid that in the town of Benjin, we're not going there specifically, but where he basically said a memorial prayer at the building to where his grandfather was from. And I honestly can't remember and there are many memorable occasions on this journey, but it was one of the most touching experiences ever. So last year, for example, we had a participant from Sydney who gave testimony also in Warsaw of the place from where the survivor who really enticed her and encouraged her to come on the program, not related, just a friend. She gave testimony of his story. So any one of you who has any kind of connection in any way, do the research, speak to the people involved, those who are either alive, or if you've got any of their material, anecdotal material written by them, stories, books, etc., artifacts, letters, anything and everything that you can bring with that will make the connection, that enhance that connection and enhance the experience for the participants. I encourage you to bring that with you. I encourage you to let me know in advance so that we can plan where we're going to go. Clearly, with regards to, for example, with Peter, where he was actually born in the town of Lodz. We will try and make that as personal as possible. We'll hopefully be able to go to, or as close to where he was born, etc., etc. And there are other examples like that. So please feel free to bombard me with whatever information you have that is related, and we will try and accommodate that to the full extent we possibly can. And when I talk about artifacts, I encourage you to bring with you copies. Obviously, if there's stuff that is original, keep that at home, but make copies if you can, and bring it in one of those sort of plastic sleeve folders so that you can also share them with the participants, so that you can show them photos. There'll be time for each one who has a personal story to tell to share that with the rest of us. And so the more of that kind of material we have, the more enriching and satisfying it will be for all of us. I'm going to just take a brief sort of hiatus for the moment, and I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to open the floor to all of you for any comments, questions, before we sort of head into a few summary type things that I want to mention. Any questions you may have, any comments you may have, any requests you may have. So unmute yourself and feel free to jump in at any stage. Anything from anyone?
Sorry, Cedric, I don't actually have the reading list. I've
Okay,
gone
so
through and
we
checked,
will.
and I don't have. Yeah.
Okay, apologies for that. I thought that we did send that out.
It was sent out in one of the emails. I'll send it again this week with the link to this video.
Fantastic.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Just Cedric, I've not sort of where as general as we have been about the thing, a more specific question. Do we know what actual day the march is on?
Yes. So the march takes place on Yom HaShoah, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the 6th of May. But again, Yael will send everyone the itineraries. Once again, I do believe we've sent that out before, but if not, we'll send it again together with the recording of tonight's proceedings.
Thank you.
So you'll have all of that tomorrow, or later today possibly, or tomorrow.
It'll be Tuesday probably. The march itself is on the Monday the 6th.
Monday the 6th.
Thank you.
One thing I would like to just mention for everybody's benefit is that so we will be a sum total of together. So first, well, let me just take one step backwards. I'll send you his profile as well shortly, or Yael will in the next coming days. But the guide who will be accompanying us is a gentleman by the name of Mark, or otherwise known as Mookie Jankelovitz. Mookie is a personal friend of mine, an amazing guide who has been a guide and an educator for as long as I can remember. He guides both in Israel and in Poland. He is an extraordinary and fantastic fount of knowledge and wisdom. But I just want to mention a little bit about, and I think I mentioned this in the info session that we sent out to everybody as well, and some of you attended. The philosophy that we have with regards to our guide, and Mookie is joining us on March of the Living this time. He's done it for other groups, other delegations from other countries before, but for March of the Living Australia, this will be the first time he's working with us. And prior to that, Julian, who was the guide in 2023 and in 2019, the philosophy we have is that we tend to focus on what we call the encounters, the dialogues, the engagements, rather than the facts and the figures, because we feel that the facts and the figures, honestly, that is all accessible to. Yes, we obviously touch on them when it is appropriate, but that is not the methodology. The methodology that we encounter is opening up, talking about the dilemmas, talking about the issues, talking about the moral fiber of what went on, having the encounters with the individuals, having the engagements that one wouldn't have normally. So that's the way in which we roll. We also tend to, again, one of the sort of things that sort of guides us on this program is that we often say that we learn as much from each other, and clearly you can see that there is a lot of learning for us to have from each other, because each one of us brings an amazing connection and story and history. We learn as much from the guide or the educator as we do from the participants. So this will be a very interactive program. And we try and encourage everybody to share as much as they like or as little as they like. Clearly, it normally ends up to being as much as they like, and that is what we encourage people to do, because ultimately everybody has a story, and that's the way in which we enrich ourselves, by hearing these stories from each other. Now, some of us will be 31 people all up in Poland. In Israel, we will be a smaller group. We'll only be 20 something, because not everybody is joining us on the Poland segment. But I can assure you that week in Poland, even with those who are not continuing on the Israel League, the week in Poland will be so enriching that those bonds that we will form, even during that week, will be, I'm hoping, as they have been in the past, bonds that we keep and enrich and enhance and cherish for years to come. And so that sort of brings me to a little bit of the summary of this session, where we're just getting to know each other. And that is clearly, and this has certainly been my experience over the years, we're all going for different reasons. But at the end of the day, we all share a very common reason, and that is the desire to learn, the desire to educate ourselves further, this desire to hear and be heard, the desire to learn from the past in order to make a difference for the future. And ultimately, as far as March of the Living is concerned, that is the beauty of the program. Whilst we all have different connections, whilst we have different touch points on these various topics, we're all going for the same reason, and ultimately that is to continue this journey of learning, and hopefully that will materialize into one of the most life, I wouldn't say life-changing, because I think some of us are not looking for a life-changing experience, but certainly a memorable experience that will be one that we will never forget. And that so as far as learning from each other is concerned, again, it sort of connects to that topic that I sort of raised a little bit earlier, and that is those who have that personal connection. The more you can bring with you, the better, because that way we'll be able to learn more. And ultimately, I do encourage everyone to engage. I don't think there's anyone on this program who is coming just to absorb. I think that it's all about giving as much as taking, and I think that's the beauty of the program. So what I'm going to end off with, prior to, again, I'll come back to everyone with any last comments, but what we tend to do from this stage onwards is to encourage everyone in the group to share with each other, because clearly there will be touch points that already we can identify. So what we'll do, Yael will send out a contact list, unless there's anybody here who has an objection to us sharing amongst the group your contact details, your email, and your phone number. Normally what we do is we also create, and that might not necessarily be right now, but a little bit closer towards the program, we create a joint WhatsApp group, whereby it serves us immensely during the program for keeping in contact and sharing messages and things about the day and the hotel and this and that and where we are and all that sort of thing. But even prior to the program, it's a means of remaining in touch. Those people, we try not to bug too many people with too many WhatsApp messages on this. But unless somebody has a major objection, that WhatsApp group is definitely something which we encourage, and we ask that people give us the permission to create that on your behalf. And then people can share different stuff over the next 6 weeks before we leave. It's hard to believe that it's coming up so quick. And the last thing that I have from my side is that the next session when we get together is really about the nuts and bolts. And the nuts and bolts exactly about, we'll go through the itinerary, we'll go through when everybody's arriving, what one needs to pack in advance, some suggestions and recommendations that I have for packing and what to bring and what not to bring over the years, and various other bits and pieces related to the actual program closer to the time. So the next session that I'm going to, I'd like to suggest is, and sorry that it's not all about me, but it would be nice if we could accommodate that. I'm going to be in Melbourne for work purposes on the 16th of April and the 18th of April. So I'm hoping that we could do a session in Melbourne either on the evening of the 16th or the 18th of April. And those people from out of town would then join us via Zoom. And the way in which we've done this in previous years, if there is somebody from Melbourne who would be, it's not a big crowd this time, would be willing to, no problem. Thank you, Catherine. No worries. Lovely seeing you. We'll talk soon. If there's anyone from Melbourne who'd be willing to possibly host the 10 or so people from Melbourne and then potentially have others join on a Zoom call like this, that would be great. Yael will send something out to everyone just to confirm that, either the 16th or the 18th in the evening. That will be the next time. If anybody in the interim has any questions with regards to the logistics and the bits and pieces, by all means, send an email to Yael and myself. But other than that, we will touch on anything and everything you wanted to ask about March of the Living, but hadn't. That'll be the time to do it. So go ahead, Mary.
Sorry, Cedric, just if there is a choice between the two dates, Catherine, Marsha and I, Marsha maybe is a day or two later, but Catherine and I are flying out on the 18th. So if it could be the 16th, that'd be great. If it's not, then an apology, because we won't be able to attend the 18th, just so you've got that.
16th is a good day for me.
Yeah, I think the 16th is a great day.
Too close to Pesach otherwise.
Yeah,
that's right.
No worries. No worries. Okay. If unless anybody's got a major objection, let's keep it on the 16th, and Yael will send out a save a date and the time and all that. And in the meantime, if there's anyone from Melbourne who's willing to host the 10 or so of us from Melbourne, just let Yael know.
Cedric, sorry to interrupt. I'd be happy to host, but I don't live in Caulfield or Elsternwick. I might be Jewish, but I'm one of the Jews that live outside of that sort of region. There's only a few of us out this way, but I'm out in Maribyrnong, but I'm happy to host.
Fantastic.
But if there is someone, I gather most people would prefer to be closer, particularly because it's so close to Pesach. I'm quite happy to go.
I'm happy to host. That's Rochelle speaking. I'm in Malvern though.
That's fine.
Step over Dandenong Road to Malvern, but yeah,
it's closer than Maribyrnong.
Yeah, that's true. No, thank you, Yael. Thank you for both those offers. That's wonderful. Yael will finalize the details, and possibly Malvern is closer. I don't know, but Yael will sort that out. But thank you for Marsha for sharing that, and thank you. Does anybody have any other questions for the moment? Comments, suggestions, requests? No? All good. All right. Lovely, lovely, lovely meeting you all. Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it. We'll see you all on the 16th. And we'll be in touch. If anybody wants anything, you know where to find Elle or myself. And look forward to it. And have a great evening. And those of you joining us shortly on our virtual event, it should be fascinating. Otherwise, we'll see you on the 16th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cedric. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye,
very
everyone.
much.
Bye.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.